What's up YouTube? This is Dan the Fix-It Man. Got another quick video here for you. I'm going to show you how to change your rear brake pads and rotors on a 2001 Chevy Silverado. Now this is a four-wheel drive, the half-ton 1500 series, and I know some of these have got a different rear brake setup. Sometimes you've got just a full drum. This is the disc drum combo with a single piston caliper. We ended up on the other side changing the rotors, and here's the reason. This is our rotor from the other side. You can see that it's gone so metal to metal. These things had grooved in there, and this inner side of the brake disc is all but worn away. Usually that's going to make a lot of noise. In this case, it was ignored for quite a while. That's our reason for changing out the rotors, not just the pads. Of course, when you're doing brakes, you're always doing both sides the same, so went ahead and ordered both sides, and I decided to film this side here. This is the side that isn't as bad, but the process will be the same. Like I said, I've already got the other side replaced. The first thing I usually do is I'll take a little bit of pressure off of this caliper piston in order to take this off. But in this case, I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to remove these Caliper Slide Pin bolts, top and bottom. They're a 12 millimeter. I'm just going to use a ratcheting wrench on this. And then the slide pin that it goes into sometimes will move. In this case, you can hold on to it with a 16 millimeter open-end wrench. So we'll go ahead and just break those loose and take them out. Same with the bottom one. You can see it sometimes wants to slip. Holding on to that with the 16 millimeter open-end wrench will help keep that from spinning. That's what that bolt looks like. Then we can just pry the caliper off. And this is a pretty lightweight caliper. I'm just going to set it up here, up over here on the leaf spring. Might as well just pull the pads out now. You can see they're worn down, but not completely gone, but pretty close. Now, in order to take off this caliper bracket, there's two 18 millimeter bolts here in the back. I'll move the camera so you can see. Again, these are 18 millimeter. Once you get them broken loose, that's what those look like. Now, as you loosen up this last bolt, I like to keep a hand on this caliper bracket, otherwise it'll drop on the ground. There's our second bolt, and we can pull this off. Now we can pull off the rotor and drum. Now make sure you've got your parking brake off, otherwise this might be stuck on there. This is our parking brake shoe. Looks like it's still in pretty good shape, but you can take the time to inspect that, and you may need to adjust that just by pulling this little star wheel adjuster. You can move that outward just a little bit if you need to tighten this or move it in if it's a little too snug. Now, it's also a good idea to clean out some of this brake dust around here. I try not to spray too much on the pad material itself or saturate that too much, but it's good just to kind of knock off some of that dust. Now we can put on the new rotor and drum. See how that fits over that parking brake shoe. That actually feels pretty good right there where it's at without having to adjust that. The owner of this truck picked these up, looks like at AutoZone, and I did not paint them. This is called a Z-clad coating, high carbon formulation, and the Z-clad coating for superior rust protection, advanced material to reduce noise. If you need a part number here, it's a 55066DG. Okay, now here's our caliper bracket. Before I put this back on, I wanted to do two things. First, I wanted to pull out these slide pins and clean them and re-grease them and put them back together. Just get all that junk cleaned off of that. You need to keep these greased up, otherwise your caliper can bind up and seize, and then all kinds of problems. But you know, it won't release. But this does need to be able to have some grease in there. And this little boot, once you get it all greased up, you just press on that rubber on the outside, just press it down and it should snap into place just like that. There we go. That one looks good. Same with the other side. See, this one pulled out differently. It wasn't even snapped into the boot. And leave the boot on, I guess. It's not going to hurt anything. Same thing, we'll get it all cleaned up. At least most of that surface debris. They just, you know, with the grease in there, they do, even with that cap on there, they just tend to attract all kinds of brake dust and whatnot. But this grease I'm using, this is the Sil Glide. It's good stuff. It's silicone based, so it doesn't harm the rubber, and it really keeps stuff from locking up. But so just put that slide pin right back in and see if I can get it to snap into that rubber boot on this side. Maybe not. And I'm just pulling the boot off to see if I can make it work that way. There we go. There. Almost pulling it inside out here, but that worked. And then we'll just press it back in this way until I can get that outer rubber to snap in place, just like that. There we go. Okay, slide pins are lubed. The other thing I do want to clean up and get some grease is on these little pad retainer clips here. So I'm gonna do the same thing, just hit it. Sometimes a little wire brush in there helps to get any debris out of there that will also bind up the pads. You know, the pads just kind of sit inside this little notch here, and you really need to have that nice and clean so that the pad can move back and forth without any issue. Sometimes new brake pads will come with these new retainer clips here too. In this case, they do not, so we're just reusing these. Sometimes it's a good idea to pull those out. If you've got a lot of rust or debris, you can pull those out and clean inside there. But we really don't have a lot of rust here. Just trying to not get any of that brake clean into my new slide pins that are all freshly greased up. Guess I could have done this before greasing those. That's not perfect, but that's cleaner than it was. Just give it another little quick brush there. Yeah, that's good enough. Before I put these on, I'm just going to dab a little bit of grease right inside this channel here too. That's right where the ear of the brake pad slides in and out. Do it on each side there. Just enough to keep that brake pad from binding up. Now this is ready to go back on. Okay, so just bring that back around, and you've got your caliper bolts here. Just go ahead and get those started by hand. Same with the, you can see it's still got some thread lock on the threads here. This yellow thread lock that can kind of holds it in place, keeps it from vibrating off. Sometimes I'll add thread lock, but I don't have any today, and looks like there's enough on there to keep that from coming off. Again, that's the 18 millimeter. Now you can double check your manual on the torque spec here, but I believe it's right around 80 foot-pounds. If I get a chance, I'll look that up and put it in the description. Okay, now we can put our new brake pads in. Before we do that, I'm still going to put a little bit of this Silglide brake grease on the back of each pad, just on the back of the shim. And I'm going to put just a little dab here on the ends as well, where it slides inside that channel that I already put a little bit of grease in there. And they just slide into place. Same thing with this outside pad on the back, and then some at the ends. This just seems to help keep those pads a little bit quieter, keeps them from making too much noise. And there we go. Locked in place where they need to be. Now before we can put the caliper back on, you can see we still need to press this caliper piston back in. Now before I press the caliper piston back in, I like to put a little bit of grease, just a little bit, just around this rubber boot. This Silglide seems to keep all the rubber from drying out and cracking too much. What we'll do is just kind of put a little bit on there and then wipe off the excess. A little bit on the surface of this caliper piston is good as well, you know, where it makes contact with the back of the pad. And you can see we've got this little metal spring retainer in here that helps hold the pads down when it's installed. So good idea to clean that up as well. Just gonna hit this with a rag and wipe off some of that excess. This tool right here, this is a caliper compression tool. It's very inexpensive. It does kind of the same thing as a C-clamp would do. You know, you can put a C-clamp over the whole caliper here and press that back in. But you just kind of put the old pad in and then just turn this. Now before you do this, it's a good idea to pop the hood and verify the level of your master cylinder. Make sure that you're not going to overflow brake fluid all over the place in the front. I've already done that. Just verify that level, make sure that it's not too full, because what we're doing is pushing the fluid backwards. You can also open this bleeder screw here and push the old brake fluid out of the caliper if you'd like, without pushing it back through the system. That is something you can do when you do a brake job, but if you do open that, most likely you're going to be bleeding the system. You can see our rubber boot here doesn't want to sit completely flush. It's a little stiff there. Kind of just, if I can just massage that back in place with my thumbs and just kind of push that boot back in. That way when you put this back on, if that rubber's sticking out, it will catch on the pad and you can end up with a torn boot there. Sometimes these calipers just get old and need to be rebuilt or replaced, but we're not leaking right now, so we're ready to put this back together. Just drop the caliper back down and just watch those pads as you're putting it in and make sure that that boot doesn't catch there. And then go ahead and get those bolts, caliper slide pin bolts, started by hand. Now you can see again that this slide pin is just spinning as I'm trying to tighten that. So that's where that 16mm open end wrench will come in handy. Now the torque spec on these, you can double check your manual, but I believe it's right around 30 or 31 foot-pounds. Same with the bottom here, just get that all torqued down. Having to use that 16mm to hold that in place. And you're done. Just remember to get everything torqued per spec, and before you head down the road, step on the brake pedal a few times until it's firm, which is going to push that caliper piston back out, pushing those pads up against the rotor where they need to be. If you did open the hydraulic system or open that bleeder screw, you probably will need to bleed the brakes. I'll go ahead and put a link to the tools and some of the parts used in the video. I may not be able to find all these parts online, but they were purchased today at AutoZone. Looks like a good quality rotor and pads. This coating, of course, at the surface material, it is going to burn off, and so you'll smell that for the first little while driving until the new pads burn in or bed themselves into the rotor and get rid of that initial coating. But it will help to cut down on the rust on the outside or the rest of the rotor and drum. Hope you liked the video. Please give it a thumbs up and subscribe if you don't mind. That does help me out. Thanks so much for watching, and good luck.